Coming to you from the mountains and the plain. The only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. My name is Max McGuire.
And I'm Joe Otto.
And Joe is joining us again from Washington, D.C. There on business, so that's why he's in a random conference room today. Got people joining the stream now. We were going to talk originally today just generally about how the mainstream media and the Democrats just always seem to take the opposite position of Donald Trump. I think we should save that for another day because as much as I hate doing it, I do think that we need to spend some time today debunking what Bob Woodward put out yesterday and what the mainstream media has been putting out related to his book release. Because it's really scummy stuff. I don't like, Joe, to give these fake news stories any extra airtime, but they're just going to keep coming. And I truly feel that it's our responsibility to debunk them because the mainstream media certainly isn't.
Well, I think that there's a bigger issue that we probably should talk to, and that is that they're just going to keep the hits coming. They're going to create that propaganda, and there's no accountability, right? There's no such thing as being authentic or being truthful. What we're seeing right now from the media is just a barrage of information, misinformation, and what's even more discerning is it's coming from the media, and it's also coming from tech companies. So tech companies are actually starting to prop that up. I don't even know if you notice this, or some of you out there that have noticed this, but they've also come out and said that they're offering people money and offering people incentives to get off of Facebook for 60 days, like literally till after the election.
Yeah.
And most of the people that we're seeing that are actually being told to do that are the boisterous ones that have basically stood up and said, you need to vote for Trump and here's why you need to do it. So you have those people that are advocates for, why the some people on the right and the right or the left are against President Trump, and most of it has to do with the fact that President Trump is standing for the American people and against this establishment. Call it what you want, but even people in Washington, as I'm here, are having those same conversations of, hey, listen, the only way we're going to win is to lie. That's really they're the only way that they think they can win is to lie, right? And frankly, it should scare you that we're having to deal with voter fraud issues. We're having to deal with misinformation and lies. We're having to deal with this just barrage of campaigns that frankly just seem state sponsored by this establishment machine.
Yeah.
So scary stuff.
There's no doubt in my mind. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but Joe Biden only campaigns 2 or 3 days a week, and I truly believe that the reason for that is that he is in the middle stages of dementia, and anyone who's gone through this with a family member knows that they have good days and they have bad days. And it seems, at least to me, that Joe Biden's campaign is trying to make hay when the sun is shining. And on his good days, he goes out and about. But when they're bad days, he doesn't have any public events. And if you actually watch the pool reporters, those are the mainstream media reporters that are assigned to the campaign. When he's having a bad day, it's very clear because at 8 or 9 a.m., his campaign will basically call a lid. When you call a lid, that means that there's no more public events for the day and the pool reporters can go home. There's no reason for them just to hang out around his house. 2 to 3 days a week is all he's campaigning. The rest, he's at home. He's doing live streams from his basement. He's resting, probably eating some applesauce and some ice cream. But on those days where he's at home, it's very obvious that he's a different person than when he's on the campaign because he's heavily relying on telephone, not making a whole lot of sense. Not making a whole lot of sense with what he's saying. He's visibly tired, and that just really reiterates to me that he has good days and bad days, like anyone who's going through these middle stages of dementia. But what's striking to me is that all of these fake news hit pieces, whether it's this Bob Woodward stuff, which we're going to get into, whether it's the Atlantic piece, the fake news piece, whatever it is, they always seem to be scheduled to go out conveniently on a day that Joe Biden is actually on the campaign trail. Now, the odds of that happening are slim to none. The odds of that happening, that he's only campaigning 2-3 days a week, and all of the major stories just happen to break on those 2 or 3 days, it seems pretty obvious to me that there is a concerted effort between the Biden campaign and the media to tee up these stories for him.
You know, what's really interesting is that today I've got a couple of pretty big meetings, and I think I talked to you about this yesterday, about some of the meetings that we've had with both Democrat and Republican leadership, and there's a resounding call out there, or fear, I think, on the Democrat side from some of the leadership, and the reason why there's this fear is because from a leadership perspective, they have no idea who they're supposed to follow, who is actually in charge, who's making the decisions in the DNC, who is actually, sorry guys, you're going to listen to the phone ring behind me. I'll try to figure out a way to make it silent, but I did have to, duck into a conference room to have this podcast today. But there's a real fear, a real angst, even on the Democrat side, on the train being off the rails, and it's not a small conversation. I mean, some of the conversations we're having are, as we said before, they're covered in this. Hey, are you recording this phone call?
Yeah.
Let me see your cell phone. Let's turn your phone off.
There's not a lot of trust.
Patting me down, right? Hey, are you wearing a wire? Right? These people are asking me if I'm wearing a wire. I asked for the meeting so I could have conversations about what's happening. This divide between Republicans and Democrats, and whether or not we can align ourselves, not fully, I'm not saying fully, but align ourselves with classical liberals in some of the things that are that we're trying to get across the finish line, whether or not they can support President Trump, at least in the behind closed doors, right?
Yeah.
And the scary part is that if the Democrats don't know who's in charge, and they don't actually know who's making the decisions, and the Republicans are like, this is the craziest, looniest thing I've ever seen, there doesn't seem to be any logic to it, then who really is calling the shots, right? Why is there this calculated effort of almost like the media is in charge, like almost as if, and we've talked about the deep state being a real thing. It is a real thing, right? But who's in charge? Like, who is actually pulling the string in this country? And
so you're talking about how they are asking you to turn off your phone because they're so terrified of being recorded. I think that's a good segue to get into the actual audio from Bob Woodward's recordings of the president. Now, those recordings were obviously consensual. Trump agreed to this. Why Trump agreed to sit down with Bob Woodward, I have no clue. We're going to get to it in a little bit later, that apparently Lindsey Graham pressured him to do it, which should tell you all you need to know about Lindsey Graham. Let's go ahead and play the audio, because this is the main, basically, new allegation against Trump. This idea that he deliberately,
we're going to get to it in a little bit later,
the virus, deliberately downplayed the virus, deliberately lied to the American people. Let's go ahead and play cut A.
And so what was President Xi saying yesterday?
Well, we were talking mostly about the virus, and I think he's going to have it in good shape, but, it's a very tricky situation.
Indeed
it goes through air, Bob. That's always tougher than the touch. The touch, you don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air. That's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus.
Let's go ahead and pause that there. So this is an interview from early February, and if you're listening to it, Donald Trump is basically describing what was the best information at the time. We now know that it isn't a completely airborne virus. You need to have someone spit or basically blow or breathe droplets onto you, and in those droplets is where the virus is. It's not purely airborne where it's just floating around always, right? So he's using the best information at the time, and what we're going to see from all of these interviews is that they are little snippets, and they are done in the context of what Trump knew, what the country knew at the time, what he was being told at the time. What we're seeing now is we're seeing Democrats and their media allies taking these and trying to apply a context to them that wasn't necessarily there at the time that they were spoken. So I want to just jump in. Let's go ahead and keep playing that clip.
There's 25,000, 30,000 people a year here. Who would ever think that, right?
I know. It's
it's pretty amazing. And then I say, well, is that the same thing? This is more deadly. This is 5 per, this is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%, so this is deadly stuff.
So
which that turned out to be not true either, right? So again, he was getting all this information and he was having this. Here's my question, Max. Why didn't this come out in February? Why didn't it come out in March? They weaponized this interview and created a narrative as if President Trump did the wrong thing. And I have to tell you, you can go back to Nancy Pelosi, you can go back to some of the other leadership on the Democrat side who said, hey, there's nothing wrong with this virus. This virus is not as deadly. This was well known that there were facts being created on both sides. So, and it turns out that it's not 5%. So even the information he was getting was giving him false information. He has to rely on the information that's put out in the intelligence community. And what we're seeing right now is that you can't actually rely on any of that information from the intelligence committee, and that there is this underbelly of people that are trying to disrupt and or discredit what the president does, not realizing that these communities, this intelligence community, even the healthcare communities like Fauci, Fauci came out and said masks don't have any effect. And I still believe they don't have any effect, by the way. I do believe that the mask is another psyops war against the American people.
And we have to come in right here so we don't get taken off of Facebook. Facebook, according to their terms of service, we have to tell you that the CDC and the WHO recommend the use of face coverings to prevent the spread of coronavirus. Had to jump in and say that because otherwise we are going to get taken down. It's interesting. So let's go ahead, Mr. Producer. Let's go ahead and go to my screen real quick. Joe, you'll like this. This is a new feature we just added. That's a little late. Hold on, give it a second. So that's that shouldn't be showing that. Go ahead, take that away, Mr. Producer. I guess it froze. I have to figure out how to get back into that. Sorry about that. So Trump said on Twitter today, he said, Bob Woodward had my quotes for many months. If he thought they were so bad or dangerous, why didn't he immediately report them in an effort to save lives? Didn't he have an obligation to do so? No, because he knew they were good and proper answers. Calm, no panic. I'm going to go ahead and get reconnected with my screen. But it's stunning to me that on the one hand, they're claiming that Donald Trump was saying all these terrible, horrible, crazy things. But in the very next thing, they're saying that, we kept this under wraps for months, right? So if Donald Trump truly was lying to the American people, then Bob Woodward would have had an obligation. Let's go ahead and, Mr. Producer, cut to my screen again. It's back up. I got it working again. So this is the tweet. Bob Woodward had my quotes for many months. If he thought they were so bad or dangerous, why didn't he immediately report them? Joe, that's the big question. If Donald Trump was hiding the truth about the virus, and Bob Woodward knew about it back in February and March, and Bob Woodward truly believed, and the left truly believed, that Trump was killing people, which is what they're claiming today, that he was intentionally killing people, how could they possibly have sat on this all that time? Because this has very little to do about the truth and more to do about selling Bob Woodward's books.
I think that we've lost our ability to have virtue, just basic virtue, basic ethical standards in our country. And I think that by allowing the media to even have a voice the way that they are, it's very dangerous. It's insidious. It's actually pushing people to a place where, frankly, there's not a whole lot of hope in where our country can go from here, because the rhetoric just keeps continuing. And the media has gotten to the point where this derangement, I truly believe that it's a derangement, that people are deranged to the point where truth doesn't matter anymore, as long as they can get to the result, which is trying to get rid of Trump. And I think when Trump is reelected on November 3rd, look what we're going to have to deal with. By the way, I want to stop here for a minute. I want to tell everyone to share. You need to share the message that we actually are putting out. Facebook is doing everything they can to slow down our ability to reach you. Nothing is more evident than that than what is happening on people downloading our podcasts in multiple areas, and the type of reach that we're getting on platforms that are not owned by big media conglomerates. So I need you to share this, share the message, put it on your Facebook page. If you're on YouTube, share from there as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can put our message out there. But we got to have conversations about truth. Truth is not something that is ambiguous. Truth is not something that we should run away from. It's not something that is subjective or that we want to have a debate on. Truth is truth, right? Fact is fact. And the fact
is,
just
to put it in perspective, 2 days ago, our podcast reached 97,000 people on Facebook alone. Yeah. Yesterday, after Facebook started throttling us and threatening to take down our page because we talked about a kid named Kyle who was in Kenosha, yesterday we only reached 5,000. So we went from 96,000 people reached, and that's without spending a single cent on boosting or advertising. 96,000 people reached in one episode, all the way down to 5,000 reach. So that's why it's so important for you today to hit that share button. Do three things. Hit the share button if you're on Facebook, like the video and comment, and if you're on YouTube, make sure you give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. Mr. Producer, let's go ahead and go back to my screen. I want to talk about this because this is the allegation that they're going after Trump with. It's that he told Bob Woodward that he constantly tries to play it down. He tries to play it down. Not only that, but they also played this clip, and you can read the words here. Trump says, now it's turning out it's not just old people, Bob. Just yesterday, some startling facts came out. It's not just older. Bob Woodward said, yeah, exactly. Trump said, young people too, plenty of young people. Now, that was an old interview. That was an interview when they started talking about these weird diseases that children who contract the virus might have been getting.
Right.
They're trying to take that and remove the context of today, which we know that children have much better outcomes if they contract the virus than if you're older. That's not to say that they're immune, but that's to say if you are young, if you have a healthy immune system, if you have no comorbidities, you have a very, very low chance of actually having a fatal outcome. But at the time that this interview was given, we didn't know. Trump didn't know. It was a novel coronavirus. And novel just means it's new, right? 6 months is an eternity in the study of novel pathogens. And they're trying to take a statement here months ago and basically claim that Trump is lying this month and last month when he said that children are relatively immune. Not saying that they're totally immune, but meaning that they have relatively much better outcomes compared to older Americans. That's what I mean. They're taking these things out of the context and trying to apply new context that wasn't there at the time they were talking about it. So this whole thing, we're going to keep going down the list, but this whole entire thing, it is nothing but an attempt to discredit Trump. And one of the reasons that this came out now and not months ago, A, Bob Woodward wants to sell his books, and B, the mainstream media didn't think they needed to come out with this, right? I guarantee you all of these were supposed to be October surprises. These were supposed to be down in the final stretch, and they're going through their October surprise war chest with the Atlantic hit piece, with this, because Donald Trump is surging in swing state polls. It might not be showing up in national polls, but he is surging in swing state polls. He is far outperforming Hillary Clinton among Latinos in Florida, to the point where as long as he doesn't have Caucasians rapidly leaving his campaign, right, he will win Florida just because he has a double-digit increase in Latino support in Florida, right? That's why they're coming out with this.
Well, I think that this came up yesterday, and I met with someone who's very, very smart, and he's actually a Democrat. I told him that he's more of a conservative than he probably knows, and that if we could just lay aside some of the social issues that kind of separate us, I would gladly have him become a Republican tomorrow if he would just, sign the pledge to do so. So he laughed at me, but one of the things that he said was and we've talked about this before. He didn't use these words. These are my words. But I'm going to paraphrase it based on my understanding of what he said. But he said there's an opportunity drought. There's an opportunity drought that's coming down the path for everyone, right? So kids are getting out of college today. They don't have the same opportunity. What's really funny is that narrative is something we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. And so as we start talking about really what that means to have an opportunity drought, Latinos specifically are saying, hey, listen, we've got to make sure that we secure our futures in this country first. And in the Black community, same thing. Hey, let's talk about what really means to have opportunities in these Democrat-controlled environments. And they're starting to see people who are in those environments are fleeing. They're like saying, hey, I've got to get out of here. I got to leave New York, got to leave Portland. And you're seeing more and more people that are waking up because of adverse effects to them personally from this quote unquote movement, this Black Lives Matter movement, this Antifa movement. And what's really interesting is if you just had align what Antifa, which means anti-fascists, what they're doing, they are the fascists. Like these are the people that are actually the definition of who they are is they're fighting against. That is who they are. Yeah. And that should scare you because again, it's what's right is wrong. It's like 1984 is actually coming to pass that, what's good is bad and what's bad is good. And we can create this propaganda and we can confuse people to a place where, frankly, the people that have the most to lose, which are you and I and the people in our communities, regardless of color, we've got to start standing up against this. Because if we sit back and wait for someone else to do it for us, there's a high opportunity that we'll lose the republic that we have today.
So let's go ahead and play the press conference from yesterday, just a little bit, of the mainstream media going after Kayleigh McEnany over these allegations that Donald Trump deliberately lied about the lethality of COVID-19. They deliberately downplayed it, and that he deliberately misled the American people, which it's complete BS. And we're going to get to Anthony Fauci. Maybe this falls under a clock being right twice a day, but he came out and he said, no, Donald Trump did not do this. We'll get that in a second. But let's real quick and notice how aggressive the reporters are with their questions against Kayleigh when they're lobbing softballs to Sleepy Joe. Let's go ahead and play cut one.
Did President Trump intentionally mislead the American people about the threat of COVID, a pandemic that has now cost the lives of nearly 200,000 Americans?
Absolutely not. This president, at a time when you're facing insurmountable challenges, it's important to express confidence. It's important to express calm.
Always play it down. Is playing it down, is that expressing calm? It seems dishonest. It seems
Can
like
you read the rest of the quote?
That's how much they put in there.
Oh, you excluded the last part.
We'll play the full thing on 60
Please
Minutes
do.
on Sunday. Do you deny
Please do
that he
explain.
misled the American
Please,
people
of
about
course
the
I
threat of
deny
this
that.
pandemic?
And he makes clear that he doesn't want to see chaos, by the way, is the second part of the quote, which you failed to read. The president, just days after having this discussion with Bob Woodward, said this from this podium. On March 30th, he said, I do want them to stay calm. We are doing a great job. If you look at the individual statements, they're all true. Stay calm. It will go away, but it's important to stay calm. So this president does what leaders do, good leaders. It's stay calm and resolute at a time when you face an insurmountable challenge. That's what this president has done.
Let's go ahead and cut it there. So they're
just want
trying
to
to
argue.
accuse the president of
They
lying.
want to make it seem like they can have their mic drop moment. That's all that we're talking about here. We're not talking about fact. We're talking about rhetoric. We're talking about propaganda. And we're talking about the effect on the American people. The American people are fatigued, Max. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. Like, I'm in D.C. right now, and I got to tell you, every one of these leaders that I've met with on both sides have said the same thing, right? That there's an enormous amount of fatigue, and Americans literally are going to run to the ballot box in order to elect President Trump. Both sides believe that, right? And so and frankly, I just asked a simple question. I was like, look, are you guys going to cheat? I asked the Democrats, are you going to cheat? Are you going to cheat? Is that what this is about? Is that why, Zuckerberg got on TV and said that he's not going to announce who the winner is of the presidential election until every vote is counted? Is that why Hillary Clinton get on there after 4 years ago saying that Trump's is not going to accept the election results? Now saying that if he were Biden and Harris, she would absolutely 100% fight to the bitter end and not accept election results.
So
I mean, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with
they have their facts.
People.
They have their facts that they want to share, and if you go against them, you get fact checked. But as we just watched with Kayleigh, the reporter, I believe that was a reporter for CBS News, because when she was called out for not reading the complete quote, she said, "Oh, we'll play the complete quote on 60 Minutes." That's not how it works. You don't get to go in with an edited, cut quote and then say, "Oh, we'll tell the American people the whole context, the whole quote on 60 Minutes on Sunday." You don't get to do that, right? She was called out for basically cutting up the quote and removing the full context, which is saying that he downplayed it because he wanted to make sure that the American people stay calm and they didn't panic. That's what you're supposed to do as a leader. Whenever there's a public crisis, presidents are urged to make sure that you do not let the public be whipped up into a panic. And anyone who remembers back then, there was a lot of panic going around. There was talk about a national quarantine, about martial law cutting off New York City and stopping people from crossing state lines. There was a lot of misinformation leading a lot of people to panic. There was a lot of panic buying, right? There was a lot of panic. So for Trump to go out there and trying to instill calm, if he had done the opposite, they would have accused him of fear mongering, right? But now that they can, after the fact, look at what he said, they want to accuse him of basically lying instead of what he actually was doing, which was trying to instill calm. Dr. Anthony Fauci, as we mentioned earlier, went on the record yesterday and blew up this entire story, right? You would think that Bob Woodward, if he wanted the truth, would have gone to Anthony Fauci and asked him directly, did Donald Trump lie to the American people? Anthony Fauci would have told him no. Let's listen. Cut 2.
And when we would get up in front of the press conferences, which were very, very common after our discussions with the president, he really didn't say anything different than we discussed when we were with him. So I may not be tuned in to the right thing that they're talking about, but I didn't really see any discrepancies between what he told us and what we told him and what he ultimately came out publicly and said.
So did you get a sense that he was or wasn't playing this down?
No, I didn't. I didn't get any sense that he was distorting anything. I mean, in my discussions with him, they were always straightforward about the concerns that we had. We related that to him. And when he would go out, and I'd hear him discussing the same sort of things. He would often say, we just got through with a briefing with the group from the task force, and would talk about it. So, no, it may have happened, but I have not seen that.
So you would think that this would be the end of it,
Yeah.
right? A reporter says Donald Trump misled the American people. They went right to Anthony Fauci, and Anthony Fauci has been this. Listen, the left loves Anthony Fauci so much. One of Joe Biden's chief promises is that if he wins, he's going to rehire Anthony Fauci. So that should have been the end of it. Donald Trump did not mislead the American people. He said exactly what we, the health professionals, told him to say. And he did not stray from the things we were telling him. That should be the end of it. That should be the end of the whole discussion that Donald Trump doesn't listen to the science, right? That should be the end of it. But no, the left continues. They keep pushing. Joe, we talked a couple weeks ago with the Democrat convention about a woman who was brought on, and she blamed Donald Trump for killing her father. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So she went onto the Democratic convention, and she said her father was a Trump supporter, and he trusted Trump, and he went out and sang karaoke during a lockdown, caught the coronavirus, and passed away. And she said, Donald Trump killed my dad. After Anthony Fauci debunked this entire story, CNN apparently didn't get the message because they invited this woman back on their show to spew more lies, saying that Donald Trump killed her father. Let's go ahead and play cut 3.
Lost her father to coronavirus in June. And Kristen, I'm sorry for your, still so raw loss. You spoke at the Democratic National Convention, and you blamed the president for this horrible loss. You said your father's only pre-existing condition was trusting Donald Trump. So when you hear his words to Bob Woodward, how does that feel to you?
I am so enraged. His words confirm that the president intentionally lied to the American public about the severity of this crisis. It's undeniable and it's inexcusable.
Of course it's the lie.
So your father went to a karaoke bar with friends in late May, and I know you said you believe that's when he got sick. June 11th, he woke up, he had symptoms, hospitalized 5 days later, in a ventilator by June 26th, and he died just 4 days after that. As all of that was happening, Kristen, the president was telling people, the American people, that the virus would disappear, right? That
let's cut it.
Even though
that's the
in fact,
BS.
we even had to replay this. We're just replaying a bunch of garbage, right? We're replaying.
That's why I cut it. That's why I cut it, because they don't deserve the airtime. But I do want to show enough so that people watching this podcast, again, if you haven't already, hit that share button. Facebook's throttling this, so we can't get this out there. I did want to share a little bit of that just to see how scummy it is. She's sitting in front of the camera and she's saying, I'm enraged. What Donald Trump did was horrible. That's not rage. I mean, it's scripted. She literally participated in the Democrat convention as one of their speakers, spewing these lies weeks ago. when she says that there is no reason other than to lie to the American people, to downplay the virus. Anthony Fauci just went on and admitted that he did exactly what, that Trump did exactly what the health professionals were urging him to do, which was instill calm, make sure you share the facts, but don't let the public get stirred up into a panic. And CNN decided to just go with this anyway. After it's already been debunked, they're still pushing the lies. Donald Trump literally killed this woman's father. It's disgusting.
Yeah, so by the way, we have a nice little troll, Guy Bodie. You guys will try anything. It's on tape. You're idiots. I promise you, anytime you want to have a debate or a conversation, Guy, we can have it while you're sitting in your basement with your little remote control trying to act like you actually have some common sense, which you don't. See, I've always been taught to actually look through the details of things. And frankly, that's why I think for myself. And I think that's why I don't buy into what the left says all the time. And everything the left does, and you're a part of that problem, Guy, is designed to actually destroy what my ancestors and my family actually fought for. Right? And they fought for freedom. They fought for the things that we have, the opportunity we have in our community. Yet every time we turn around, there's just more and more lies coming from the left. And you want to take into context that he said, oh, it says right there on tape, he actually, lied to the American people. No, he didn't. He instilled what he should as a leader, right? He instilled that calm. He got away from the chaos.
Producer Josh has already banned him. He's gone. Guy's gone.
All right, good. See you, buddy.
Guy went bye-bye. Bye-bye, Guy. But that's why we're playing these. We played Anthony Fauci's direct comments because that's who we're supposed to go to according to the left. I mean, this is what we're talking about with the shifting rules. That, oh no, Donald Trump can't promote the vaccine because only the scientists, the experts like Fauci, they're the only ones who can be believed. And you trot Fauci out, and he's like, no, this is completely bogus. Donald Trump didn't do this. He only said exactly what we told him to say.
That's not what happened, right? So, I mean, again, we can't even take it because, and they won't ever replay that. They won't ever replay that conversation. They won't.
No, they pretend it doesn't happen. I want to play this clip because this was from Tucker Carlson diving into why Donald Trump sat down for this interview. And according to Tucker Carlson, Lindsey Graham is the one that put Trump up to it. Let's play cut 4.
Bob Woodward's new book, which apparently spends 480 pages trashing the president, is coming out next week, just in time to influence the election. None of that should surprise you. Bob Woodward dislikes Donald Trump. He's been very clear about that. Woodward works for Jeff Bezos' personal newspaper, The Washington Post, which has made defeating Donald Trump its all-consuming mission. So, of course, Bob Woodward's book is exactly what you thought it would be. What's surprising is that Donald Trump participated in making the book. The president sat for repeated interviews with Bob Woodward. Why in the world would he do that? Well, tonight, from a source who knows the answer to that mystery, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. It was Lindsey Graham who helped convince Donald Trump to talk to Bob Woodward. Lindsey Graham brokered that meeting. Lindsey Graham even sat in on the first interview between Bob Woodward and the president. How'd that turn out? Now, remember, Lindsey Graham is supposed to be a Republican, so why would he do something like that? You'd have to ask him. But keep in mind that Lindsey Graham has opposed, passionately opposed, virtually every major policy initiative that Donald Trump articulated when he first ran. From ending illegal immigration, to pulling back from pointless wars, to maintaining law and order at home. Lindsey Graham was against all of that more than many Democrats. So maybe you already know the answer.
Go ahead and cut that there. So
we have
Lindsey Graham.
We know the answer based on, again, everyone says that the deep state doesn't exist. I want to separate the deep state from the QAnon movement, right? The reason why the media started doing things to disavow that is because it started to gather steam, as we talked about yesterday, Max. But a bigger part of the problem here is that there's establishment. These guys have been in office for 20, 30, 40 years. Here comes President Trump in 4 years' time saying, okay, I'm going to broker a peace deal. I'm going to actually reset trade with China. I'm going to close the border and create more opportunity for the people here. I'm going to solve massive problems that in business, if you don't solve, you go out of business.
Yeah.
And he's seeing that our country is headed towards a road where we can't come back from it. While the Democrats become obstructionists and do things to create propaganda because it takes away from their interests. There's a reason why Bezos actually does the things that Bezos does. It's not because it benefits the American people. They don't care about it. They want more money, more power. It's infected who they are as people. So, I mean, again, I think we've lost virtue, but a bigger issue to this is you got to ask yourself who benefits. Like, who benefits from all this? It's not us.
Well,
if we benefit, we benefit from lower taxes.
It's the people like the donors, the donor class. They're the ones that benefit. Now, listen, Lindsey Graham has done a very good job of saying he's going to do stuff and then not doing it. Remember, we're still waiting for those subpoenas, Lindsey Graham, against the people involved in Obamagate. We're still waiting on those subpoenas. Where are they? Oh, well, they're coming, apparently. We're still waiting for you to actually use your investigatory powers to get to the bottom of the whistleblower and all that, which he promised he would do months ago. Hasn't gotten around to it, has he? There's only one reason to encourage Donald Trump to sit down with Bob Woodward for a book that would come out just before the election. And that reason is that you do not want Donald Trump to win re-election. It's simple. It's simple. Well, there's no other reason, because Bob Woodward won't give him a fair shot whatsoever.
Either that, or we're dealing with a much more nefarious undertone that frankly, he didn't see coming. He didn't see the innate evil of having this particular interview. So there's a part of me that wants to give him the benefit of the doubt. But frankly, I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And Max, this is going to be hard for you to hear, right? And everyone, when I tell you this, I'm going to tell you this from the perspective of, for me, always wanted to protect our country, right? I lost many friends in wars. So I'm going to admit something. You guys are going to get mad at me, okay? So I hope you get mad at me, because I'm kind of mad at myself. You ready, Max? You know what I'm going to say?
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. So I voted for President Obama the first time. Oh my gosh, you're going to get really mad at me. Okay. Listen, I did, because I wanted change. I came from a community where I saw people not have opportunity. So I did. I voted for President Obama the first time. I was smart enough to figure out that the rhetoric that was said, but I fell for it. I mean, that's why that's why I'm out here meeting with people that are Democrats and Republicans. That's why I'm having the meetings that I'm having. It's just so I can make sure, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, right? So I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm not listening. I'm not actually doing the research. But yeah, I was that guy. I was the guy that. Well,
hindsight's always 20/20. Like if I knew then what I knew now, I would have fought tooth and nail to make sure that John McCain didn't get the Republican nomination. John McCain was portrayed as a much different individual in 2008 than he actually was. We now know that John McCain was a snake. He was part of that deep state. And when we say deep state, it's not a conspiracy theory. We're talking about people who have been in Washington, either in the executive branches, the intelligence agencies, entrenched in D.C., entrenched in the media, who feel that their being there for so long entitles them to have a greater say than the American people would actually give them, right? It's the idea that you being a career intelligence analyst, that you know more than the duly elected president of the United States, right? And that you know better. And that if something comes down the pike, in order for you to do something you disagree with, you have the right to disagree with it. Kind of like Colonel Alexander Vindman, right? The lead star witness. He didn't like what Donald Trump's policies were. So he actually colluded with Democrats to help get that impeachment off the ground. So you see that in the deep state, however you want to define it. There's people who are entrenched in D.C. who don't want to give up their power. And Bob Woodward is one of those people. Listen, Bob Woodward investigated the Watergate scandal, and he's been running off of that ever since. So Bob Woodward is one of those people that truly believes that they are so important that they should just be able to craft the narrative. Listen, it's obvious. Let's go through some more of the stuff that Bob Woodward was talking about. Go ahead, Mr. Producer. Let's put up my screen. This is another part. I've gone ahead and I'll highlight it right now for people. Donald Trump apparently divulged that he has created a new nuclear weapons system, and the quote is, "But I've built a weapon system that nobody's ever heard in this country before. We have stuff that you haven't even seen or heard about. We have stuff that Putin and Xi have never heard about before. There's nobody. What we have is incredible." So yeah, Donald Trump probably shouldn't have divulged that. But if you scroll up, I'll scroll up. Woodward says that Woodward says that other sources confirmed the information without providing further details, but expressed surprise that Trump disclosed it. So this is included to try and make Trump out to be like he has loose lips, right? The idea that he is divulging classified information that can harm America. But Bob Woodward, if that is classified information, Bob Woodward just did the same thing. And the sources that he asked to comment on this. They did the same thing. If you're in power, you're supposed to say, I can neither confirm nor deny, or just say no comment. They're not supposed to confirm that there's a secret weapon system. And Bob Woodward, if he truly believes that what Donald Trump told him is negative and would hurt the country, certainly shouldn't publish it in a book. That's what I mean. They're trying to make Donald Trump out to be this villain that he did something horrible, but they're doing the exact same thing. If that is classified information that Donald Trump shouldn't have divulged, then Bob Woodward is just as guilty for putting in a book, just as guilty for recording it, and just as guilty for giving it to the CNN, the media, right? If Donald Trump did divulge classified information, the fact that Bob Woodward recorded it and then gave it to someone knowing full well what it was, that's a violation of the Espionage Act, right? This idea that he's more virtuous than all of us, and even if it's a crime, he's allowed to do it because he's basically blowing the whistle on another crime. Bob Woodward, you're not that important. If this truly was classified information, it never should have been in your book. You should have actually had the decency to not include it. But no, he included it because he cares more about hurting the president than actually protecting America, which is something we see far too often from Democrats in D.C.
Well, and I would tell you that literally when I was having a conversation, and I have to be really careful who I say I'm actually having conversations with, right? So I've made sure that I know I don't have loose lips. They respect me. Some of them are probably actually watching this podcast, but they respect me because of the fact that I'm willing to have those conversations without saying their name. But I will tell you that, Max, there's a saying, and I've wanted to say this, but do you know who Daniel Webster is?
I've heard of him, yeah.
All right, so
don't go too far off because we have a lot we have to talk about. But go ahead.
Right. Well, I just want to say that I come back to the fact that we have to ask ourselves a simple question, and that is, how do we get here, and why are we here? Like, why are we at this place right now where chaos runs our streets, where there's just an innate lack of hope, yet there's this angst over an election? We should get to the place where, hey, whoever wins the election, great, they win the election. Let's move on. Let's create unity. Let's do things that help our communities move forward. We should not be actually having one side celebrate the fact that, President Biden wants to raise taxes by 12, 15% when there's a lot of hungry people out there who can't even feed their family with two parents going to work now, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing feels like a setup against the American people. It feels like, and I'm not the only one feeling this. I mean, again, I'm hearing it from people in Washington. I probably met with 30 people, 35 people this week, and they're all saying the same thing. And so then I get into, what I think is really happening. And I'm actually telling one side what the other side's thinking, the other side what the other side's thinking. And they all say the same thing. Joe, we have no control over what's going on. This feels like an outside influence. It really does. It feels like they're trying to destroy everything we stand for the country, and we're falling for it. So it's
Mr. Producer, let's go ahead and put up my screen again. I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off. We have a lot of stuff we have to debunk. So this is another part just below what we just talked about. Woodward obtained, and this is from CNN, Woodward obtained the 27, quote, love letters Trump exchanged with Kim Jong-un, 25 of which have not been reported publicly. These letters, filled with flowery language, provide a fascinating window into their relationship. So this, again, is criminal. Someone in the Trump administration, either current or former, handed over classified communiques between foreign leaders. That is criminal. Right? There are people sitting in federal prison for doing the same thing, but because it went to Bob Woodward and Bob Woodward gave it to CNN, apparently it's okay now. But they obtained the letters that Donald Trump was sending back and forth to Kim Jong-un to try and resolve what many experts worried would become a nuclear war. And CNN is now divulging the contents of the letters. That does not make the world a more peaceful place. If Donald Trump is trying to avert a nuclear standoff or nuclear war, sharing the contents of these private letters is not done to make America a safer place. Quite the opposite. But they truly believe that because it would hurt Trump, that is better than preserving the status quo, which is a non-nuclear conflict, right? And what's amazing, I'll go to this. CNN has actually published in the past, published the letters that they have obtained. CNN is actually publishing classified communiques between foreign leaders because they believe it is more important to hurt Donald Trump than it is to keep the world safe. Let's scroll down. This is a big one, Joe. I don't know if you saw this one, but they're trying to make Donald Trump out to be a racist because at one point Bob Woodward asked him whether he has white privilege. And I'll go ahead and read it. I don't want to play the audio for it, but I'll go ahead and read it. Bob Woodward says, "But let me ask you this. I mean, we share one thing in common. We're white, privileged. My father was a lawyer and a judge in Illinois, and we know that what your dad did. Do you have any sense that the privilege has isolated and put you in a cave to a certain extent, as it put me, and I think lots of white privileged people in a cave, and that we have to work our way out of it to understand the anger and the pain, particularly black people feel in this country? Do you feel?" And Trump cuts him off and says, "No, you really drank the Kool-Aid, didn't you? Just listen to you. Wow, no, I don't feel that at all." We actually do have that clip. Let's go ahead and play cut 5.
I mean, we share one thing in common. We're white, privileged, my father was a lawyer and a judge in Illinois, and we know what your dad did. And do you have any sense that that privilege has isolated and put you in a cave to a certain extent, as it put me and I think lots of white privileged people in a cave, and that we have to work our way out of it to understand the anger and the pain particularly black people feel in this country?
No, you really drank the Kool-Aid, didn't you? Listen to you. Wow. No, I don't feel that at all.
So the way the media is reporting this, they're reporting this that Woodward asked him whether he can understand the pain and the anger, particularly that black people feel. And they're reporting it as that Donald Trump responded to that. But what is very obvious that Donald Trump responded to was this accusation that he has white privilege and that he is in some sort of cave. And it's his responsibility to crawl his way out of the cave, almost like some weird, like philosophical, like, what was it? Plato's cave, right? That old philosophy, anyone who took intro to philosophy in college, the idea that you're in a cave and you're seeing the shadows, and the shadows aren't really what they are. They're all just people with puppets, right? And you have to figure out a way to get out of the cave. That's what Donald Trump is responding to and saying, no, I don't have white privilege. I'm not in some cave. It's not him saying that he doesn't understand that black people have felt pain and are angry about certain things, but it's the idea that you can understand that pain and anger without admitting that you yourself are in some white privilege cave. But no, the media is reporting it completely the opposite. Go ahead in the comment section, everyone. Let me know whether you believe, if you are white, whether you believe you are in a white privilege cave. Leave a comment. And if you are not white, let me know whether you think that white Americans are in some sort of white privilege cave. Because personally, I thought that Trump's answer was spot on. Wow, you really drank the Kool-Aid. But no, the media is spinning it.
Well, the media is going to spin everything. And Max, let me ask you a question about this white privilege, right? So, and this, I forget who actually did this podcast, and they talked about privilege and the fact that there's a scholarship fund that if you're minority, you actually can get scholarships. If you're white, you can't. I do know that I faced that when I was growing up. But I know it's more pronounced now because I have kids that have been in college and or are in college now. So the opportunities, even though the academics are there to get those scholarships, are always less based on how successful I've been or my wife and I have been to date, right? So I think that they use this privilege almost, I don't even know how to explain it, but he was talking about white privilege being almost like the boogeyman, that somewhere along the line, all white people, when you go to school, just have more access. I do think that there's a disparity between the poor and the haves and the have-nots, but I don't think it really has much to do with color. I just think it has to do with the fact that there's the haves and the have-nots.
It's socioeconomic, right? It's not coincidence that after Occupy Wall Street, the mainstream media shifted from talking about the poor and shifted to start talking about racial disparities. If we want to actually get rid of poverty and fight poverty, you have to treat it as a socioeconomic issue, not as a racial issue. because as people are putting in the comment section, Amy's saying, heck no, she doesn't have white privilege. She started in a trailer park. There are plenty of white people who do not who certainly don't feel like they have privilege. So this idea that if you are white, you're automatically going to live a better life, it just isn't true. And there are plenty of individual cases that show it. And I think a lot of that is an attempt to downplay the importance of perseverance and the importance of the struggle of fighting to build something for yourself, and downplaying that, oh, it's like what Obama said, right? Oh, you didn't build that. Someone else made it happen for you. It's that on steroids, right? Because what Obama was saying is like, you didn't build that. The government helped make it happen. This is putting that completely on steroids.
And again, we just get to the rhetoric and the lies and the fact that they make promises on the Democrat side that they can't actually keep, that they have no desire to keep, right? And that they don't, the symptom, the final output does not ever equal, the final output does not ever equal what they said it would. You can keep your insurance. No, you couldn't keep your insurance. Obama said that this is not going to raise rates, it's going to lower rates for healthcare. That's not true. Actually, it pushed more people to socialized medicine than it did anything else. And people started finding out that it wasn't that great, right? And right now we're looking at 700%, 800%, 1,000% more just over the last decade in healthcare costs. Nothing that they've said has actually come to pass.
Well, Donald Trump is the only president in 51, 52 years that has presided over a year in which prescription drug prices actually decreased. He's the only one.
Decreased.
You go back 51, 52 years. The only one who can say during this year, I presided over the decrease in prescription drug prices. He's the only one. Everyone promises to do it. He's the only one who's done it. And his executive orders to make it work even more haven't even gone into effect yet. I want to play this because Joe Biden had a rough day yesterday. I don't know if anyone watched any parts of his speech. He had a rough day where he was slurring his words. He was not making a whole lot of sense. He got lost in the teleprompter multiple times. But he said something in talking about prescription drug prices and how Donald Trump is like helping the pharmaceutical industry raise prices, which again, it's a lie. He's the only president in 51, 52 years that's presided over a decrease in prescription drug prices. Joe Biden said something, and it was a phrase that I had to keep listening. And we're going to play it over and over again so that you can hear it, because it seems like he's saying something very different than prescription drugs. Let's go ahead and play cut 6.
Prescription drugs. Prescription drugs. Prescription drugs. Prescription drugs. Prescription drugs. Prescription
Cut it right there. It sounds like he said prescription jugs.
Yeah.
Very, very strange. That's not a stutter. That's him reaching for the word drug. And Joe Biden, his head being in the gutter, I guess, brought out the word jugs. Is he talking about like plastic surgery being covered by your insurance? I don't know. But Joe Biden yesterday was doing this all the time. He was saying words that weren't real words, right? Like he was talking about the pharmaceutical industry. And instead he just said the pharmaceutical industry, He just cut it off. And anyone who has gone through someone in their family or friend who's gone through this early signs, the mid signs of dementia, they know that it comes a point where they're talking, they reach for a word, and it's just not there. And a lot of times a different word can come out. You're reaching for drug, instead you get jug, right? You want to say industry, you can't say it, so you just slur your word.
Maybe it's a jug of drugs. Maybe it's a jug of drugs.
I think he's actually talking about female body enhancement. That's what I think he's talking about. I think he's talking about promising to cover boob jobs. That's what I think he's talking about. But I want to play this because yesterday, and let me see if I can find it. Where is it? Oh, here we go. Mr. Producer, go ahead and put up my screen again. We have to issue a correction because yesterday we posted this on our page, and it did very well. It had, even with us being throttled, we had 1,900 shares, 1,200 comments, 141 comments. And it was that Joe Biden, during his speech, he claimed that 6,000 military members were dead from COVID. And the real number, the actual number, was 7. So we reported yesterday that he was off by 5,993. So I have to apologize. You can go ahead and take that off the screen, Mr. Producer. I have to apologize because we were wrong. And when we're wrong, we're going to admit we're wrong. That 6,000 was actually rounding down. Joe Biden claimed that 6,100, to be exact, 6,114 soldiers had died. So he wasn't off by 5,993. We were wrong. We apologize. Joe Biden actually overstated it by 6,107. Let's go ahead and play that clip. Let's play cut 7.
Military COVID infected, 118,984. Military COVID deaths, 6,114. Folks, every one of these lives matter. Every one of these lives left somebody behind, grieving. We can't ever forget them. Ever forget them. So thank you all.
Watch this.
God bless you. And may God protect our troops. Thank you.
Oh, he got his eyes. So when he puts on his mask, he covers his eyes. I don't know why you do that. If you truly believe the mask is protecting you and that there is virus on the outside of the mask, the last thing you'd want to do is to touch a mucous membrane, which is your eyes. That's the last thing you'd want to do. But Joe Biden does it every single time he puts on his mask. He covers his eyes. I mean, maybe that's a see no evil kind of thing. But yes, Joe Biden, we have to issue the correction. We rounded down to 6,000. He actually claimed 6,114. So our math was wrong. He was not off by 5,993. He was off by 6,107. So we apologize, but Joe Biden is that much more of a liar. And yes, you're right. All those lives do matter, but families weren't left behind. He just made up a number. The DOD's official number is 7, and that's tragic that 7 people in the military lost their lives from COVID-19. Joe Biden just went up there and read from a piece of paper that the number was actually 6,114. He's just making it up. And the media doesn't even call him out on it.
Well, they just made up the fact that Trump hates and thinks that people in the military are suckers. That's not true either. I mean, everything that they say is just a lie. I feel like I'm just playing whack-a-mole. Every time we get on the show, we're talking about more stuff. Okay, well, that was a lie. Well, that was a lie. And then we go to fact check even the things they say about Trump. And we just ask a logical question, like, well, if this was so bad, why didn't Bob Woodward, why didn't he come out in February? Why didn't he come out in March? Right? Why didn't he come out at the beginning? And the reality of it is they just want to weaponize it against the people and they just want to try and take everything that you have. Just imagine that if you're listening to this, that they just want everything that you have. They want you to pay more in taxes. They want you to have to work more. They want you to get paid less. That's the truth, right? And they want more people to work for the government so they can control you. I couldn't be any more discouraged than I am, Max, but at the same time, very hopeful. The discouragement just comes in the fact that we have to deal with so much rhetoric and crap every day, and it's just shoved down our throats over and over and over again. But the other side is that I feel hopeful because I do see that people are starting to rise up against this propaganda that's being put in front of them.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's very demoralizing to every day have to come and debunk it, but that is the job that we have to do. That's the cross we have to bear, because if these lies are able to take root, the country's gone, right? They're going to throw everything they can at the wall to try and see what sticks. And the only reason they're doing that is because they're terrified. They don't believe that they're going to win. They wouldn't be doing this. Joe Biden wouldn't be up there exaggerating military COVID deaths by a factor of, 800 or something? He wouldn't be doing that if he thought he was going to win. He'd be in his basement eating his applesauce and his ice cream. So the good news is that when they're fighting back this hard, it tells you that they're not confident they're going to win, because if they were, they'd be taking it easy. Joe Biden would be taking a nap right now instead of spreading these lies. Well, Joe, any final words as we wrap up this episode?
We're hitting that final point, right? We're hitting that final point in society where we're going to, there's something's going to have to give. The gates are going to break open, and unfortunately, we're already in a civil war. I mean, if you think we're not in a civil war, anytime someone's getting killed or crucified because they have a different ideology or different belief system, that's the definition of a civil war. So I just want you to just know that you have a choice to make, whether you stand up with courage or you don't stand up at all and you wait for the outcome to happen. But everyone needs to get involved. There's lots of different ways you can get involved, but the first of which is make sure you vote, make sure that you are talking about truth, and make sure that every time that you see something that's not true, you call it out as not being true. You have an obligation to do that. You have an obligation to set the record straight. And it doesn't matter if they attack you, right? And you can say, oh, it's going to affect who I am as a person. Well, just imagine what's going to happen about the effect of you as a person if Joe blank-faced Biden actually makes it into the presidency. So stand tall, stand strong, and man, I got lots to talk about when we get back about all the notes that I have about the people I met with here. It's pretty amazing, pretty amazing discoveries that I think that or revelations that'll come from it that after I get back and you and I download, Max, we'll talk a little bit about those things. But scary stuff that's happening in Washington, the echo chamber that they're developing. And even scarier is that the Democrats actually don't feel like they're in control.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of work to do. Our work is not finished, which is why we're going to keep coming at it every day. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of the podcast. If you want to help us, make sure that you check out the link in the description to join our email newsletter. As we said, Facebook took us down this week. We won that appeal. They never should have taken us down, but they did it anyway. They're still trying to delete our account. So if you want to make sure that you get an update, if we do get banned, get an update for how we're going to continue the show, please make sure that you sign up for the email newsletter. The link in the description to sign up for the email newsletter. That's how we'll keep you up to date with any changes for the show. We're also on Parler. Make sure you follow us at Conservative Daily, all one word. We'll be happy to follow you back. There's a link for you to support the channel by buying some of the merch. Also, if you want to subscribe to the audio versions of the podcast, if you can't watch live or Facebook's not notifying you all the time, make sure that you subscribe to the audio. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Podbean, all different places that you can get subscribed and get notifications when the audio goes out. And if you haven't already, please make sure you like and follow our Facebook page, as well as subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and the bell for notifications. I think we hit it up. I think I hit it all. Donald Trump is coming out with a press conference immediately after this, so make sure you look out for that. We're going to go live as soon as we end this show, so make sure you look out for that. So again, my name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Otto.
And remember that the fight to take back our country clearly isn't over, but the only way we win is if we all stand and fight together.